When you look at these three guys, something that comes to mind is that they all lost presidential elections during the last 2 decades. However, something they also have in common is that they never became president. Yes, technically 2 of them already has the shot to be president, and that is why they're not included in this list. So, today I'm going to talk about top 10 people who never became president. Now this list is probably going to amuse some people. It is mostly a list consisting of people who either had a lot of chances to become president but they lost, either tried a lot, or simply you should be really glad they never became president. So let's get to it. Number 10, Hubert Humphrey. Okay, Humphrey, where do we begin? How about the 1948 Democratic Convention? He was the main anti-segregationist speaker and was a strong supporter of civil rights. He was first a big candidate in 1960, but ended up becoming the vice president of Lyndon Johnson in 1964 instead. Then he ran and got the nomination in 1968, when he of course lost to Richard Nixon. He tried again for the nomination in 1972, but that one he also lost to George McGovern. He was a leading voice in the Democratic Party and a senator from Minnesota for a long time, and certainly someone who deserves credit for trying but not really reaching it, though he got very close in 1968. Number 9, Alexander Hamilton. Now Hamilton was a founding father who was the Secretary of Treasury for a long time. However, he died way too early in 1804 because he was shot. And what is a cooler way to die than to being shot by the Vice President of the United States himself? He is only one of 2 people in the history who has been shot by the sitting Vice President, which is kind of awesome. Alexander Hamilton was somewhat younger than many of the other founding fathers, and because of that he was certainly a qualified candidate to be president as late in the 1820s, had he only lived. Of course, he did not live as he was shot by the Vice President in 1804, but he is considered one of the most important founding fathers and by some the man who invented America. Number 8, Hillary Clinton. Now, someone who really wanted to be president was Hillary Clinton. She was the first lady for 8 years, then a senator from New York for another 8 years, and then she ran for the first time. Now, 2008 was a very good year for Democrats, but as she lost the nomination, she had to try again later. That time became 2016 when she did win the nomination, though she had to deal with quite stubborn resistance from Bernie Sanders. In the end, she did not win that election either, as she lost to the current president, President Donald Trump. Number 7, Adlai Stevenson. Now, he was sort of the Democrat who was a big figure in the 50s. He was from Illinois, he was a very liberal candidate at the time, and he got the nomination twice in the 1950s. However, both times he unfortunately faced the very popular General and President Dwight D. Eisenhower, who was nominated by the Republicans as someone who would bring NATO together and be a strong president for both Europe and America, and in order to counter the Soviet Union, they thought that it would be a good thing to have a president who was not an isolationist, unlike some in his party. So Stevenson was soundly defeated by Eisenhower twice and did not really come that close to being president, even though he was nominated 2 times. Number 6, Thomas Dewey. Now, if Stevenson is the Democrat who always lost in the 50s, Dewey is the Republican who always lost in the 40s. But he did get closer. He was first nominated in 1944, after actually being a candidate in 1940. However, he lost to the very popular incumbent FDR, even though he did win the state of Ohio, which has been known for selecting the president. He then got the nomination again in 1948, and he was a long-time favorite to win over incumbent President Harry Truman. However, in one of the major upsets in history, Truman defeated Dewey, as, well, some newspapers did get wrong because they thought Dewey was going to defeat Truman and therefore printed their newspapers too early. Number 5, Harold Stassen. He was the governor of Minnesota in the 1930s and 40s, and then resigning in order to serve in the US Army. Or was it the Navy? I'm not sure. However, he first ran for president in 1948 and was one of the major candidates for the Republican nomination. However, he lost to Thomas Dewey. He tried again in 1952, but withdrew and eventually supported Dwight D. Eisenhower, who won, and he became a part of Eisenhower's administration. He then continuously ran for president as late as 1992, and while he never won and did quite poorly after the 1948 and 1952 elections, he is one of the few people who has actually gained hair when he has aged instead of losing it. So certainly, he is someone who we should all aspire to be. Number 4, John McCain. Now, probably one of the most famous people recently on this list is John McCain. He was the senator from Arizona first elected in 1986 to replace longtime Senator Barry Goldwater. While definitely more moderate than Goldwater, he has been known as the Maverick, who often votes with Democrats to great anger for the Republican presidents and majority parties. For example, he voted against lifting and repealing Obamacare in 2017, and he often voted against the Bush administration as well. He first ran in 2000 and was the major runner-up against George W. Bush, who did win the general election against Al Gore. Then he ran in 2008 and he got the nomination, but in a year that was very favorable for Democrats, and he was soundly defeated by Barack Obama. In 2008, he did choose running mate Sarah Palin, and her lack of experience, as well as the falling economy and unpopularity of Bush and the Iraq War, greatly added to McCain's difficulties in being elected that year. Number 3, Bob Dole. Now, if McCain was the Republican candidate who was always trying to get nominated in the 2000s, Dole was the same person just in the 80s and the 90s. He was a Republican vice presidential candidate in 1976, and they narrowly lost, of course, to Jimmy Carter and Walter Mondale. Then he ran for president in 1980, but was defeated by Ronald Reagan. He ran in 1988, but was defeated by George Herbert Walker Bush, both in years where Republicans eventually won the general elections. And when Bob Dole did win the nomination in 1996, he was soundly defeated by the popular incumbent President Bill Clinton. He was known as a senator who got along with both parties, as is shown by these fantastic photos of him with some of his opponents. And yeah, he is definitely someone who is very well known for being a leading candidate but losing elections, either as the nominee or not. Number 2, Henry Clay. Now, Clay is someone who is much older than most people on this list. He was actually the Speaker of the House for a while and the corrupt man who, in 1824, made a deal with John Quincy Adams that basically gave the presidency to him over Andrew Jackson. He was subsequently the nominee for president in 1832. However, he was defeated. He also ran for president a lot of other times, but he did not get the nomination. He did, however, get the nomination in 1844, when the incumbent president did not seek re-election and James K. Polk defeated Tyler. So he was never really that close to becoming president. He only gained the nomination twice, but he tried, and I guess we should give him credit for trying. But this brings us to number 1 on this list. Number 1, William Jennings Bryan. The reason he is number 1 on this list is mostly because he was a leader in the Democratic Party who was nominated for the presidential ticket 3 times and he lost all of them. And he lost all of them to another guy who was also named William, which is a big accomplishment. He was known as a big opponent of the gold standard and wanted it removed. On the other hand, his opponent, which was of course William McKinley the first 2 times, was a supporter of the gold standard. And as the Republicans had led successfully during the years after the Civil War, he was soundly defeated, almost only getting electoral votes from the South. And to make it clear that he would certainly have become president had he run in different years, well, he did not run against Theodore Roosevelt, but he did run in the years where Republicans were extremely favored. Had he done so in 1912, things might have become quite different. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it informative. This was just my opinion. Of course, there's no real way to rank the people who never became presidents after that scale. Anyway, that's all I had for you guys today. Please like this video, please subscribe, and I'll see you next time.